Years ago, I married the man of my dreams in every sense of the word. Attractive, charming, flirtatious, seductive, and someone who valued me above all else. Something very different from my previous relationships. However, being by his side came with some setbacks, such as his status. You see, he's part of a noble family, quite well known in the city where I live, but contrary to what everyone thinks, and by how they profile him on networks, he's a sweetheart. He's not as much of a party boy as people make him out to be, and he's quite humble and reserved with his things. However, he's not alone in the family, as he also has his sister and grandmother. His parents died in an accident during one of their trips years ago, so it was his grandmother who took the reins of the family. He defines her as one of the greatest warriors in the history of mankind, as she has been in charge of business, relationships, status, and everything, while still raising 2 kids. She's a very loving person when you get to know her, but before she gives you the go-ahead in the family, you are either an acquaintance or a collaborator, one of 2 things. Anyway, with me, there's good news. I fall into the first category since I'm the most serious relationship her grandson has had, since he has only dated 2 other girls. And although at first it was a little awkward for the same reason, in the end, we got along well and we have shared some vacations. However, when we talk about his sister, my sister-in-law, things change a bit. She's very sweet, really, and from the beginning, she has been concerned about me and my well-being, something that made me also fall more in love with the idea of being with my husband before we got married, because I thought that her whole family, despite their nobility, could still be considered human and more fundamental, family. She treats me like a little sister, and whenever she can, she gives me little gifts that can be very expensive. Just to tell you that on one occasion she gave me earrings worth $200, and I almost had a heart attack, only to later give me a bracelet valued at $800. Anyway, the girl is very sweet, only that not all that glitters is gold. She has a somewhat difficult relationship with my husband. Just to put you in perspective, when he introduced me to his sister, on a different occasion than his grandma, it wasn't because he wanted to, but because his sister showed up at the time. Otherwise, he would never have bothered to introduce her. He barely said, "She's my sister, say hello," and then led me into the living room, leaving her and me with confused faces. He explains to me that she's an extremely manipulative and fake person, and that it turns out that the 2 of them have some sort of rivalry regarding the ownership of their grandmother's house, which they want upon her death so that she can leave it to them in the will. I know it sounds a bit grim, but he tells me that this kind of situation happens more often than the public might imagine. Wills, conflicts, fights, and family disputes over property or even assets valued in the millions. Of course, it's hard for someone like me to see the whole picture, but he says that their situation is complex because there are only 2 possible heirs. That's why his sister, whenever she can, looks for ways to sabotage his life so that his grandma will disinherit him. It seems that the person who has the best command of the business and the family name will take the property, and any sign of indiscipline or immaturity would mean that someone has already lost the game. This has been the case for some years now, and they have even gone to the extreme of sabotaging relationships and jobs, double-dealing with each other, and even swindling each other out of business. My husband once told me of a pyramid scheme his sister got him to participate in, losing almost $5,000 in the process, something his grandma was disappointed in for years. They take sibling rivalry to another level. Anyway, somehow I get involved in the whole conflict, being like a lever that each one tries to pull in their favor. Regarding this, Grandma tries as much as she can to get me out of this uncomfortable position, telling me that eventually they will get over it. I don't think they will get over it so soon, so this is my day-to-day life. My family, my mom, mostly, tells me not to get too involved, but it's hard when you live surrounded by all that conflict. I moved in shortly after we got married. We wanted to wait until after the wedding, and while most of the time it's a relatively comfortable environment, those fights feel very childish to me, even if it's for a fairly adult and serious reason. I've talked to both of them separately, and they gave me their reasons for having the house. According to my sister-in-law, because she's older and therefore should be the next heir by default, my brother, on the other hand, tells me that he deserves it more because of his merits and because his sister is, in his words, the ruin of the family, guaranteeing that she would destroy the house in a heartbeat after having it, apart from the fact that she would evict us at once. We could afford a house of our own, of course, but this is the one with the most luxuries and amenities and, to a greater extent, the most emotional burden for my husband. On the other hand, he assures me that if his sister had it, she would turn it into a party den every weekend. And that is not something anyone in the family would have been willing to tolerate, not even him, being the younger brother. Update 1. Well, to drop the whole husband and sister thing a bit, I can give some good news regarding my side of the family. For the upcoming vacation, about 5 months from now, my oldest niece, Lily, will be visiting. She's very excited because she's coming from North Dakota, and it's been about 6 years since I've seen her. I will be showing her around town, and I promised my brother that she would be in good hands. This visit comes after at least 2 years that Lily and I have been fighting with my brother to get her to come. He wasn't too sure about the whole thing because Lily is still very young, and he says I don't live in the best environment for a little girl to be in. He says that because he knows that with all this nobility stuff, well, a lot of times you tend to be cautious because of, strong situations, and it was something my husband said to me when we first started dating. From now on, you're about to have a good life, but it's not without risks, so you better stay home as much as you can and don't go out alone. The good thing is that sometimes we go out with escorts, and although our city has a low crime rate, it never hurts to be cautious. Well, that's what my brother's afraid of. But I promised him nothing would happen, especially since we will always be indoors. We will go to a beach house that the family has and to some ecological hikes in a well-known park, where there have never been any incidents of any kind. It hasn't been easy, but in the end, we were able to make it. I just hope everything goes as smoothly as silk while we wait for the next summer vacation. Of course, I'm excited, as I haven't seen Lily since she was a little girl. She was the sweetest, smartest little girl in the world, although my brother tells me that she has a very strong rebellious teenage instinct, and in that sense, she's a bit like Auntie, haha. Anyway, I know she's been trying pretty hard in class, so I know she deserves these kinds of rewards. She and I usually talk at least twice a month, and she tells me her stuff. She says her mom doesn't understand her and her dad is a pain in the ass, so I'm the cool aunt she can vent a little. I've even told her about my husband and his sister's situation, and she says part of her is even excited to see what that kind of dynamic is like, because it feels like it's a 1990s sitcom. The battle of the century, she calls it. On the other hand, my husband's family. I won't say they're excited, but I won't say they're indifferent to it either. They're always going about their business, so when I commented and asked permission, of course, that my niece would be staying with us, they were happy. Still, it's not like they're going with us for 100% of the activities we have planned, since this nobility thing is a 24/7 affair. Anyway, that won't stop us from having a great time. Although he's not too happy about the idea, my husband agrees to let his sister Lily and I have a girls' night out or two, although that would look like something out of a 90s sitcom. I know it's a long way off, but as you can tell, I'm very excited about it. Poor Lily tells me she's trying 3 times as hard in class so she can pass everything with a perfect grade and not feel so guilty about coming all the way here. I told her she had nothing to worry about since her father trusted both of us enough to have a good vacation. Update 2. This has taken a bit of a sour turn, as something just happened in the house. A week ago, my husband's grandmother started feeling a bit down, and 3 days ago she passed out of nowhere in the hallway. She's currently in bed with a fever, but it is quite delicate. The lady, while not as old as such, is still elderly, and the family has a history of starting certain body aches and pains in her 60s. She's 68, and the truth is that we thought she was immune to it since my husband tells me that it was in her 60s that she began to feel better than ever. In other words, the opposite of what was expected. However, this luck wasn't infinite, as right now she's in bed, resting. This has unleashed a wave of bitter comments from my husband and his sister, since, if you ask them, I confirm that they keep talking about the inheritance issue. It's amazing how those two can go to the extreme of talking about a possible upcoming death right next to the convalescent. I've tried to butt in, but the more I do, the more I tell myself that it's not my problem, even though what is possibly my future home is at stake. At this point, I feel that if this keeps up, I will be the heir to this house, as the walls are made of paper, and Grandma can feel the negative energy those two emanate. On the subject of Lily, well, it is delicate, as she's about to come in a month, but given Grandma's situation, this might be difficult. The most bitter part of the issue is that the plane tickets have already been bought, and canceling them isn't only expensive, but it would also affect the girls' emotions. And why not? Mine too. As I already told you, this trip has been planned for almost 2 years, so canceling it is a hard blow for everyone. It is incredible how this had to happen just a short time before the trip. Grandma is currently in a bit of a low state because, apart from the fevers, her hip is not completely healthy due to the blow she took during the fainting spell. She claims she was fine, just like any other day, but when she took the wrong step, she ended up falling next to a decorative table, and that's when the lights went out. The next thing she remembers is lying in bed, already the next day with all of us and the doctor around, waiting for her to wake up. That night was pretty rough for all of us. Update 3, an update on everything. A week ago, Lily arrived at the house and everything has been fine. Not super duper fine. Just fine. Already my sister-in-law and grandma have met her, although the latter has been in pretty delicate health. She'd been in bed for 2 weeks now. Before that, she'd been recovering, even being able to get out of bed and go to the bathroom on her own. I was a little pained the day she was able to get out of the house since she was so excited. I wouldn't want it to be the last time she went out, God save. But all of a sudden she had a breakdown that, in her words, made her whole body ache, down to her bones, and she must have been bedridden. It's somewhat uncomfortable, and I have had to do it myself, to give her small massages to stimulate her muscles and joints. This has to be done because of the lack of physical activity, and this is when things get a little messy. Mostly because it's the 3 of us who have to give Grandma those massages, and my sister-in-law thinks I'm ganging up on her so we can take over the house, when in reality, I'm just trying to take care of the one who is now also part of my family. Grandma has a few moments where her lights go out, but she regains consciousness almost immediately. We have sought out the best doctors, and money is certainly not an issue when it comes to the health of the head of the family. Of course, I've tried to keep this situation as light as possible for Lily, who is still quite excited about the trip. What's more, because of the whole GM thing, we haven't been able to get out enough to enjoy my niece's vacation, but it was too late to cancel. I've promised her that by the end of the month we will be going to the beach without fail, although I would be too embarrassed if Grandma got worse. It's a pity that this has happened just at this time, but I don't let myself be defeated by it. My husband told me that I may as well leave Grandma's care to him, but I'm still a little embarrassed not to cooperate. Imagine that at this point, GM hasn't even met Lily because of how bad she is. The most we've managed to do is go to the park for ice cream and go on one of those pedal boats. Otherwise, I would just be in the house and I wouldn't dream of letting her go out on her own, because she doesn't know the place well enough yet. My sister-in-law has said that she even plans to take her out for walks when she's free from Grandma's care, which I found very suspicious, considering that she's with her 24/7, so she can be the winner of that stupid rivalry with my husband. He, meanwhile, is genuinely concerned about his grandmother and goes shopping, cooks, massages her, and buys her medicine. I won't say his sister doesn't do it, but he's always more attentive. That's adorable to me, and it's one more reason to understand that I married a very good man. Update 4. On a positive note, at least, I went to the mountains with Lily, and we had a wonderful time, almost to the point of feeling guilty. My husband stayed home to take care of his grandmother, and the same was true for my sister-in-law, who said separately that she was going to be arriving for the night at the cabin. But nothing happened. I feel like they are both still in this stupid war over who will get the inheritance, and that's why they decided to take care of GM beyond seeing her better. The last I heard from the old lady was that she was now having severe pains in her arms. When she lifted them up, she felt as if they were being pulled, to the point where it seemed as if they were being pulled away from her body. It's a pretty raw scene to watch, and it's what her grandson and granddaughter have to deal with every day. Rather, this little trip between Lily and I allowed me to escape all of that for a moment, as ugly and selfish as it sounds. We enjoyed the trip, though, and maybe the day after tomorrow, we'll go to the beach, this time with my sister-in-law. Between us, I'm getting a little tired of the sibling wars, as my husband reminds me every single time that I shouldn't trust her, while she keeps asking me if I truly love her brother. My God, leave me alone. I just want to spend a nice vacation with my niece and nothing else. I hope the lady recovers so they can see all the effort they made and see that what they wanted so much is gone. Update 5. Okay, this is serious, and after a whole day of despair, I feel like this is the only place I can de-stress a bit, even if I write with a disastrous pulse. Lily has disappeared. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but she's not in the house, and now I'm super freaked out. That happened yesterday, and I'm in tears because I don't know her whereabouts. The last time I saw her, she was talking to my sister-in-law. I didn't know what she was saying, and I didn't even wish her goodnight at that time. I just went to the room, and that was it. The next morning, yesterday, I called her room and got no answer. An hour later, when I got tired of calling her for breakfast, I decided to go look for her in the room but got no answer. When I went in, I found everything messed up, and I didn't see her phone anywhere, so I decided to call her. I didn't know if she had left with someone out there, although I asked my sister-in-law, and she said that she hadn't seen her all day, and also that the last time she saw her was the night before when they were talking. I haven't said anything to my brother because I don't want to scare him, but we have already gone to the police as every call we made to her ended up on the answering machine. The security cameras from the day before had coincidentally been turned off and did not show where he had gone. I have been awake since yesterday and haven't been able to close my eyes. If I remember correctly, I told you about the risks of nobility, and it is something my husband has been stressing to me all these days. We are moving all our contacts to find Lily's whereabouts, but every second that passes, I feel more and more guilty. This, along with the grandmother issue, makes our lives a complete mess. In just one night, I've already had more physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion than in a lifetime. If anything happens to that girl, I will not forgive myself for the rest of my life. We have even avoided talking to her grandmother about it, because we know she could have a severe relapse. She has only now been able to start feeling a little better, and throwing this news at her out of the blue couldn't be a worse idea. Eat it. I need urgent help. I've been getting messages on my number, telling me horrible things and confirming what I've been thinking since I stopped seeing Lily. I think this is a case of kidnapping and extortion. My husband tells me that I have to calm down, as these are very delicate situations and that I need to be calm. Update 6. Sorry for the interruption of the last note. I'm feeling the world in slow-mo. I was just explaining that messages have come to me saying that they have Lily, and we must follow specific conditions to get her back. One of them is that my husband and I must take a trip to another state, where she is. Apparently, she was taken on a trip in the morning, and she's somewhat drugged, so she doesn't know what the deal is all about. Just the scenario of seeing her in situations like this makes me panic and tremble. We already have all the police on the case, but everything is null and void. My husband tells me that I should calm down, which is what I was explaining to you the other day, since these things usually happen, but it is worse when they notice that you are panicking because they know how to take advantage of the situation. We have a theory that they have had us on their radar for a long time and have been following our movements. I've never been so scared in my whole life, and my mind is racing, even considering divorcing my husband just to have the normal life I had before, although I think it's a little late for that. I spend every night crying, and I can't fall asleep until I've swallowed at least 2 pills. Grandma keeps getting better little by little, and I think that's the only good note in all this that is happening to me. Update 7. First, I want to tell you that you can finally breathe easily. It's been a whole year since that bitter moment in my life when Lily came to visit us at the house. Wow, so much has happened already that, frankly, I don't even know where to begin. I'll start by apologizing for the lack of updates. I was advised to put the topic aside as much as possible, as it ended up affecting me too much. Secondly, I'm doing this just to put an end to the matter, since this is the only way I'll be able to be calmer. Now, with the story, how did it all end? With the pleasant and not so pleasant news that Lily hadn't disappeared, but that she had been kidnapped by someone from our environment, none other than my sister-in-law, who had devised everything as part of an evil plan for the quarrel they had at the time. If I remember correctly, she and Lily were talking the night before, and it was because my sister-in-law had prepared a surprise for her in a suite where some friends would be, giving the lie that I was already aware and couldn't accompany them. After all, I was taking care of Grandma. Anyway, she did this to get her out of the state and make my husband and I go to pick her up on a trip that would take several days where she could get a head start to convince the grandmother to leave her stupid house. That's right. It sounds like something out of one of those Mexican or Turkish soap operas, but that's the reality. The plan was more elaborate than I thought, with her being helped by her friends with the messages, taking care that Lily didn't have access to her phone. They hid it from her or damaged it or something, I don't know, and making her lose all communication. And of course, since she's a teenager and they offered her to go from party to party, she accepted. So she partied for almost a week and a half, while at home we were panicking to death. We found out that was simply because Lily, as happy as she was in that place, had to call her dad from a payphone when she had the chance to tell him what a great time she was having. They didn't skimp on anything because they were having such a good time that it didn't even give the girl time to use social media. She told me later, when we were talking about it, that they went from place to place and sometimes they didn't even let her breathe. Every time she was about to break away from the group or something, they would offer her everything, from ice cream to a new pair of expensive jeans. The only positive thing about the whole thing was that at least she enjoyed her kidnapping. Anyway, she got in touch with my brother, and he told me he was happy that Lily was having such a good time. I still remember that day, when I had to use all of my acting skills, and I never was to follow up on the conversation by saying, "Oh, right, Lily. Did she tell you where she was? It's just that she went out with some friends of mine, but I don't know where they ended up." And that's when I knew the whole thing. We stormed my sister-in-law until she admitted everything, and that's when we decided to take revenge. Believe me, it was one of the most euphoric moments of all when my husband and I were deciding what to do with her, and it ranged from filing a complaint to some outrageous thing with her things, like donating them to charity or something, I don't know. But in the end, we opted for one that I was sure she was going to hate with her soul. We talked to Grandma, who, by the way, she was already recovering by leaps and bounds. It was just when we learned of Lily's whereabouts that GM, by the coincidence of life, began to feel better. She always jokes about how her blood seems to be magical, but on this occasion, I quite believe it. And well, when Lily came back, ruining my sister-in-law's plan, it was because we explained to her and GM what had happened. It was a risk, considering that Grandma had been in such poor health, but that's when my sister-in-law confessed everything and mentioned how she was going to make it all look like a game, so that when we came back from looking for Lily, she could have the property. We considered that to be out of line, and GM felt the same way. Although it was only a few months, she did lose a lot of weight, but her mental state was what recovered best in the end. She was able to understand well the seriousness of the matter and not only got upset with my sister-in-law, but made a big apology to my family, saying that this wasn't wanted this way. The end of the story is what many, including us, originally wanted. While no charges were filed against my sister-in-law, Grandma decided to make the will at once in case tomorrow she's no longer in this world. She put us as heirs to the house, and if that wasn't enough, she had my sister-in-law spend a good bit of time as an employee of the house. Of course, in the eyes of the public, everything would remain the same, but she would be in charge of the household chores if she wanted to continue to have the benefits of nobility. At times, it seems like too much, but that little plan she made was too serious to let it go unpunished. Mind you, next time, I'll tell Lily to go on vacation on her own, or at least until the house is officially ours. But given Grandma's new health, I don't feel like that's going to be anytime soon.